1882. A man walks the Texas Panhandle with a surveyor's chain. He is measuring a strip 220 miles long. The grass runs to the horizon. No towns, no fences, just wind and shallow basins that might hold water after rain. He plants stakes, records bearings. The line he marks does not exist yet except on paper. This starts as a budget deal, 3 million acres traded for a capital. Cattle comes later. Are they building a cattle operation or just closing a budget gap with grass? If you find this kind of documentary investigation valuable, please like and subscribe to Support Our Work. Chapter 1. The Land for Capital Deal. Texas owns millions of acres and cannot afford to build a capital. 1876. The new state constitution establishes a framework for setting aside public land to fund capital construction. The logic is straightforward. Texas is land-rich and cash-poor. The existing Capitol building in Austin, Texas is deteriorating, inadequate for a growing state. Texas needs a structure befitting its size, but the state treasury cannot fund construction. The solution proposed is elegant in theory. Trade land for a building, but the available land is in the Panhandle, a region so undeveloped that many maps leave sections blank. There are no railroads yet. County governments exist on paper, but not always in practice. No significant towns, no established markets, just grass, space, and the occasional cattle outfit running herds on open range. The land has potential, but potential is not cash. Contractors know this. Building a capital is expensive. Stone, labor, engineering, furnishings, all of it costs money up front. Accepting remote Panhandle acreage as payment is speculative. The value depends on future development. Railroads arriving, settlers coming, markets emerging. None of that is guaranteed in the 1870s. 1879. The legislature authorizes the formal process for trading land. Bids are solicited. Initial responses are lukewarm. Contractors want cash, not grass. Negotiations stall. The state adjusts the offer, increases the acreage available, sweetens the terms. The stakes are clear. Without a deal, Texas either builds nothing or finds cash it does not have. November 9, 1881. The old Capitol in Austin, Texas is destroyed by fire. The urgency intensifies. The breakthrough comes when a group forms around Matthias Schnell, a contractor from Chicago, Illinois. Schnell brings partners, John Farwell and Charles Farwell, brothers with wholesale business and political connections. Amos Babcock, Abner Taylor. These are men experienced in capital deployment and land speculation. They are not ranchers. They are financial operators who see an arbitrage opportunity buried in Texas grass. 1882. The syndicate and the state finalize the deal. The contract is specific. The syndicate will construct a new Capitol building in Austin, Texas, according to approved designs. In exchange, Texas will grant the syndicate 3 million acres of public land in the Panhandle. The land will be surveyed and deeded. The Capitol will be built. Both parties will deliver. The survey happens first. William Mabry receives the assignment. He walks the boundaries, establishes corners, documents the tract. The work takes months. He is measuring a strip along the New Mexico border, running north to south through territory still being organized into counties. Amos Babcock himself inspects the tract. 36 days on the ground, traveling roughly 950 miles. He confirms the claims are accurate. The inspection also reveals a survey error that helps Texas retain a strip along the border roughly 310 miles long. When Mabry finishes, the syndicate owns, on paper, approximately 3 million acres extending across 10 counties, Dallam, Hartley, Oldham, Deaf Smith, Palmer, Castro, Lamb, Bailey, Hockley, and Cochran. The strip is roughly 220 miles north to south. Width varies depending on county lines and prior claims. The investors form a corporation, Capital Freehold Land and Investment Company. 1884. To finance development, John Farwell organizes the company in London, England, to raise British capital through bonds. Contemporary scholarship describes the operation as having a headquarters in downtown Chicago, Illinois. The capital and decision-making authority sit far from the Panhandle. On paper, the company now controls an area larger than some eastern states. The challenge is converting paper ownership into revenue. The plan is methodical. Fence the perimeter. Stock the range with cattle to generate interim revenue. Build infrastructure. Run it as a unified ranch while waiting for external factors to increase land value. When railroads arrive and towns emerge, begin liquidating. The cattle operation is the bridge between acquisition and liquidation. It is not the end goal. Meanwhile, in Austin, Texas, construction begins. The new capitol is designed in Renaissance Revival style. Granite is quarried and transported. Skilled labor is imported. The building rises slowly, stone by stone. The public watches. Newspapers cover progress. April 1888. The capitol is completed. Total documented cost, $3,744,630.60. Texas now has its building. The syndicate now has its land. What neither party has yet is certainty about profitability. Chapter 2. A Boundary That Won't Behave. The tract resists easy description. 3 million acres is not a parcel you can visualize from ground level. The strip runs approximately 220 miles north to south along the New Mexico line. Width varies. The grant extends deep into Texas in some counties, follows narrower corridors in others where prior claims dictate the shape. When you stand in the middle of it, the curvature of the planet becomes perceptible. Grass and sky meet at a line that seems impossibly distant. The Panhandle sits in a climatic transition zone. The Llano Estacado, a high, semi-arid tableland that covers much of the ranch's footprint. Annual precipitation in the region typically runs 18 to 20 inches, most of it falling between April and September. Amarillo, Texas, which lies near the eastern edge of the grant, records an average of 19.71 inches annually. By late summer, surface water is scarce. The region is dotted with playas, shallow circular depressions that fill with runoff during storms and then drain or evaporate. Most hold water only briefly, sometimes just days or weeks after heavy rains. A playa that looks like salvation one week is dust the next. Cattle cannot rely on them. Neither can the men who will try to manage cattle here. Groundwater exists. The Ogallala Aquifer underlies much of the high plains, serving as the primary source for wells. But the aquifer is not uniformly accessible. Depth to water varies, quality varies, success rates vary. Drill in one location and water comes up sweet and abundant. Drill a quarter-mile away and you hit mineral-heavy water unsuitable for livestock, or dry sand and rock. Every dry hole is lost money and wasted time. The grass that covers the grant is mixed prairie, species adapted to the climate, growing dense in wet years and curing on the stalk in dry ones. Cattle can graze year-round if snow accumulation does not become too deep for them to paw through to reach forage. But the Panhandle is exposed. Blizzards arrive with little warning. Blue northers, strong cold fronts, can drop temperatures rapidly, turning conditions lethal. If cattle have no natural shelter and no drift fence to stop them, they walk south until they hit an obstacle or collapse from exhaustion. Dead animals frozen in a line, following instinct into oblivion. The syndicate examines this landscape and calculates capacity. Grass supports cattle. Cattle generate revenue. Revenue justifies the investment. They commission a management plan to divide the tract into 8 operational divisions, each with its own headquarters, corrals, bunkhouses, and resident manager. The divisions will be named for geographic features or water sources. Buffalo Springs, Middle Water, Ojo Bravo, Alamositas, Rita Blanca, Escarbada, Spring Lake, Yellow Houses. Each division will function semi-independently within the overall corporate structure. Daily operations, such as moving cattle, repairing fences, and drilling wells, will be managed locally. Strategic decisions will be directed from a central headquarters. The headquarters will relocate once, from Buffalo Springs to a new railroad town that does not yet exist. The town will be called Channing, Texas, platted along the Fort Worth and Denver City Railway line, which is still under construction. The syndicate is betting that infrastructure will follow settlement, that rails will reach the Panhandle, that towns will emerge where the tracks go. In 1882, none of that is assured. Chapter 3. Wire First, Then Cattle, 1885. The ranch transitions from concept to operation. The syndicate hires its first general manager, B.H. Campbell, known in some records as Barbecue Campbell. He understands cattle, but has never managed an operation approaching this scale. No one has. The task is to convert 3 million acres of grass into a functioning ranch capable of supporting profitable livestock operations. Campbell makes a choice: fence first, then stock. Without a fence, control is impossible. Cattle drift. Neighbors graze syndicate grass. Theft is easy. The first priority is enclosure. Mabry surveys the first pasture fence, the Buffalo Springs horse pasture, marking the line with stakes placed roughly every 30 feet. The fence is completed in spring of 1885. Within the next year, 781 miles of fence are strung. Accounts from later years describe the fencing as using cedar posts set roughly 40 feet apart with wire stays between posts, and 4 strands of wire. Fencing on this scale is a logistical challenge. Wire must be freighted in by wagon from railheads that are still far from the ranch. Posts must be sourced and set. Crews must be hired, equipped, and supervised. Summer heat makes the work brutal. Men handle wire under direct sun, metal hot enough to burn through gloves. Winter cold makes fingers stiff, wire brittle, work slow. Spring storms turn the ground to mud, bog wagons, delay everything. The fence becomes the physical manifestation of ownership. Also the physical manifestation of vulnerability. Every mile of wire is a mile that can be cut. Every post is a post that can rot, break, or be pulled out by someone who resents what the fence represents. Simultaneously, cattle arrive. July 1st, 1885. The first herd, 2,500 Longhorns, arrives at Buffalo Springs. One of the early trail drivers is Abner Blocker, known as Ab. The syndicate contracts him to deliver herds north to the Panhandle. Blocker is credited with devising the XIT brand. When Campbell asks for a mark that is hard to alter, Blocker sketches the 3 letters in the dust with his boot. The design is simple, clear, easily applied with a branding iron. Cattle purchases accelerate. By November of 1886, the ranch has purchased over 110,000 head, valued at more than $1,300,000. By 1887, the ranch averages roughly 150,000 head. Peak years see 35,000 calves branded. The scale is unprecedented in the region. Infrastructure build-out happens in parallel. Wells are drilled, windmills are erected, corrals are constructed, bunkhouses are built. The syndicate is not just running cattle. It is building a hydraulic and logistical network capable of supporting cattle across a landscape that naturally resists dense stocking. By 1887, the perimeter is mostly enclosed. Internal fences begin dividing the range into pastures. The ranch now has the basic structure to function. What it does not yet have is proof of profitability. Operational headwinds accumulate. Droughts, blizzards, prairie fires, predators, fence cutting, declining markets. The ranch will operate largely without profit for much of its life. Chapter 4. The brand that means nothing. The syndicate needs a mark for its cattle. The choice is XIT. The design is simple. 3 tall, narrow letters burned into the hide of every animal the syndicate owns. Within a few years, a story begins circulating. The brand stands for 10 in Texas. 10 divisions, 10 counties, 10 something. The number feels appropriate. The ranch is vast, sprawling, fragmented across the Panhandle. 10 sounds like the kind of symbolic figure that would fit an operation this large. But other origins suggest different origins. One version claims that Ab Blocker, the trail driver, sketched the brand in the dirt with his boot when Campbell wanted a hard-to-alter mark. Another version holds that the brand was chosen in an office in Chicago, Illinois, by investors who never saw the Panhandle. What emerges across accounts is function over symbolism. The brand is designed to resist alteration. Cattle theft is common in the era. Rustlers routinely modify brands to disguise stolen animals and claim ownership. A C can be turned into an O with a running iron. A single vertical bar can become a different letter. But XYT presents a problem. 3 vertical elements with horizontal crossbars. You cannot add to the design without making the alteration obvious. You cannot subtract from it without leaving evidence. It is a practical choice aimed at reducing theft losses. The 10 story persists anyway. Cowboys repeat the story around campfires. Visitors carry it home and repeat it. Newspapers print it without verification. By the time historians begin systematically documenting the ranch decades later, the folklore is deeply entrenched alongside other explanations. Company records suggest the ranch operates with 8 divisions, not 10. The brand is XYT. Whether the letters were ever intended to encode 10 in Texas or were simply chosen for anti-alteration function depends on which account you trust. Cowboy memory insists on meaning. Corporate documents suggest practicality. Both stories survive. Neither one has fully displaced the other. The brand works as intended. Cattle bearing XYT are identifiable from distance. Theft is reduced, though not eliminated entirely. The syndicate registers the brand with the state of Texas. It becomes one of the most recognizable marks in American ranching history. But recognition does not translate to profitability. The brand solves one problem, ownership identification, while the larger operational problems remain: distance, water scarcity, weather volatility, market fluctuations, labor turnover, infrastructure, maintenance costs piling up faster than revenue covers them. Chapter 5. Infrastructure becomes an empire. Water forces the next decisions. 1886. Within the first year after major operations begin, the syndicate fences 781 miles of wire. Internal fences are added to divide the range into manageable pastures. By 1900, the ranch operates with approximately 94 separate pastures and a cumulative total of roughly 1,500 miles of fence. Every mile requires continuous inspection and repair. Wire breaks, posts rot, weather damages. Vandals cut. Fencing alone does not make the ranch functional. Water distribution does. Without reliable access to water, cattle cluster near natural sources. Clustering leads to overgrazing, soil compaction, range degradation. The solution is to distribute water artificially across the range using wells and windmills. The syndicate commits to building a hydraulic network. By around 1900, the ranch operates approximately 325 windmills and 100 earthen dams. The investment in water infrastructure is estimated at $500,000, possibly more. Every windmill requires initial installation, ongoing maintenance, periodic part replacement, and eventual full replacement when towers collapse or mechanisms fail. A windmill stops. Cattle move to the next water source. If two mills fail in the same pasture, animals bunch up. Stress increases. Grass gets trampled to hardpan. A cowboy rides out to assess damage. The repair requires parts not carried in saddlebags. He rides back to headquarters. A crew is assembled. They haul equipment across miles of rough country. The fix takes days. Meanwhile, cattle wait, thirsty, or walk excessive distances to alternative sources, burning energy they cannot afford to lose. Cowboys ride regular circuits, checking windmills. Simple repairs can be done in the field. Complex repairs require specialized crews. A remote windmill failure can take days to address. In winter, water freezes in tanks. Cowboys break ice daily, often multiple times per day, so cattle can drink. Cold, repetitive, essential. In summer, evaporation is relentless. Tanks refill slowly. Cattle cluster and wait. Here is the arithmetic at peak capacity. 3 million acres, roughly 150,000 cattle, approximately 150 cowboys, around 1,000 horses, 325 windmills, 100 dams, 1,500 miles of fence, 8 division headquarters, 35,000 calves branded in a productive year, 27 years of continuous operation, wages, materials, equipment, taxes on 3 million acres. Every cow requires water daily and grass seasonally. The syndicate stocks according to calculations. Weather does not follow calculations. A dry year reduces forage. Cattle lose condition. Market prices drop for underweight animals. The choice: sell at a loss or hold the herd and pay to feed them through another cycle with no guarantee of better conditions. Infrastructure multiplies capacity and risk simultaneously. More windmills allow more cattle per section, but more windmills mean more maintenance, more labor, more capital tied up in equipment that depreciates and breaks. The syndicate keeps building. The break-even point keeps receding. Each windmill sits above a drilled well. Blades turn in wind, driving a pump that lifts water and deposits it into a surface tank. Cattle learn locations. This distributes grazing pressure and prevents localized overuse. But the system is fragile. Windmills require wind. During calm periods lasting days, tanks do not refill. If cattle empty a tank and no wind arrives, animals must walk to alternative sources. Dams provide supplemental storage, catching runoff during rains. But dams silt in. After heavy rains, sediment washes in and reduces capacity. Maintenance crews dig out accumulated silt. Labor-intensive. Some dams leak. Others crack during droughts as soil dries and contracts. The syndicate learns that water infrastructure affects land value directly. When liquidation begins, buyers pay premiums for sections with functioning windmills and reliable wells. The $500,000 invested is not merely operating expense. It is land improvement that raises resale prices. The syndicate is not building water systems to run cattle forever. They are building them to sell the land in pieces later. Chapter 6. 8 divisions, 1 payroll. Distance makes unity theoretical. At peak capacity, approximately 150 cowboys work across the 8 divisions. The Panhandle workforce in this era draws from many backgrounds. Hispanic New Mexican settlers had established a presence in the region. Census records from 1880 show substantial Spanish surname populations in several Panhandle counties. Mexican-American freighters, such as Casimiro Romero, hauled supplies for the ranch, part of the broader labor network that made large-scale operations possible. Cowboys live in bunkhouses at division headquarters or in line camps, small, crude shacks, positioned at intervals so riders can shelter during extended patrols. A line camp, 1 room, no windows, a stove that barely heats the space, a bunk, supplies for a week if you ration. Isolation measured in days of riding. No one to talk to. Wind as the only consistent sound. Pay is standardized, $25 to $30 per month for regular cowhands. Foremen earn more. Skilled specialists, well drillers, blacksmiths, carpenters command premium wages but are difficult to recruit and harder to retain. Turnover is high. The work is physically demanding, often dangerous, conducted in extreme weather. Accommodations are minimal. Isolation can be severe. Spring, branding season. Calves roped, thrown, branded, castrated, released. Crews work long days processing thousands. Summer, checking infrastructure, riding fence lines, inspecting windmills, patrolling for strays. Fall, roundup, gathering cattle from vast pastures, sorting by age and condition, driving market-ready animals to shipping points. Winter, feeding in severe weather, breaking ice on tanks, checking for drift when storms push animals against fences where they pile up and suffocate. Injuries are common. Men are kicked by horses, gored by bulls, crushed in loading accidents, thrown and trampled. Broken bones are routine. Some injuries disable. Deaths, while not frequent, are not rare. Cowboys caught in blizzards freeze, struck by lightning, drown crossing swollen creeks. The ranch keeps minimal medical facilities. Serious injuries require transport to distant towns, a journey taking days. The syndicate keeps meticulous financial records, but minimal narrative documentation. Payroll ledgers survive. Personal diaries and letters from cowboys are scarce. Institutional memory is financial, costs recorded, profits and losses tallied. Everything else is inference from fragments. Cowboys are hired and terminated based on operational need. During roundup, divisions swell with temporary labor. Between roundups, crews contract. Some work 1 season and leave. Others stay years. A handful advance to foreman positions. Most remain unrecorded beyond a name on a sheet, if recorded at all. The syndicate rents their time and bodies. When employment ends, through termination, resignation, injury, or death, men leave or are replaced. The ranch continues. This is the mechanism. Replaceable human labor, applied continuously under difficult conditions, managed from distance by people who do not live on the land or perform the work. The 8 divisions have names but uneven resources. Buffalo Springs, Middle Water, Ojo Bravo, Alamositas, Rita Blanca, Escarbada, Spring Lake, Yellow Houses. Each operates with autonomy within corporate structure. Each has a manager making daily decisions: when to move cattle, where to focus repairs, which windmills need attention, how to deploy labor. But divisions are not equal. Some have better water access. Some have grass that holds up in dry years. Some are closer to rail shipping points. Some are remote, making resupply difficult. These differences shape operational rhythm and profitability. The general manager, based at headquarters in Channing, Texas, oversees the entire operation. But distance is persistent. A rider from southern divisions cannot reach the town in a day. Information travels slowly. Problems compound before headquarters knows they exist. Division managers make decisions independently, informing headquarters after the fact, rather than waiting for authorization. Communication relies on mail, telegraph where available, or courier. Instructions arrive days after drafting. Weather delays are common. Blizzards close routes. Flooding makes trails impassable. Telegraph systems speed some communication, but many division headquarters are not connected. Messages relay through intermediate points, introducing delay and error. Division managers develop their own cultures and policies. They make arrangements with neighboring ranchers to share water during droughts. They move cattle across division boundaries when grass conditions demand. They improvise solutions rather than waiting for headquarters approval. This autonomy makes the ranch functional at ground level, but creates tension with headquarters' desire for standardization. The syndicate issues operational rules. Ranch rules documented in published accounts include prohibitions on gambling and liquor, and restrictions on carrying weapons on ranch property. Compliance is uneven. Cowboys in remote camps ignore rules headquarters cannot enforce. Division managers prioritize production over policy. Enforcement remains inconsistent across 8 divisions spread over 220 miles. Cattle drift across internal boundaries. A steer branded at Buffalo Springs ends up in Escarbada pasture. Division managers argue over inventory tallies. Headquarters arbitrates when disputes are reported. Resentment lingers. Cowboys from different divisions develop rivalries. The ranch is legally one entity. Operationally, it functions as 8 separate units forced to share a brand, a balance sheet, and a corporate hierarchy that does not always understand local conditions. Here is what that looks like in numbers. 8 division headquarters, each requiring a manager, foreman, regular crews, seasonal labor during roundup, cooks, blacksmiths, carpenters. 150 cowboys at peak, spread thin across 3 million acres. That is 1 cowboy for every 20,000 acres. 1 man responsible for monitoring fence, checking windmills, finding strays, moving herds, branding calves across a territory larger than many eastern counties. The ratio explains why things break, why cattle go uncounted, why the system only works because it accepts loss as normal. Chapter 7. The Ranch that Reaches North. The ranch extends beyond Texas in function, if not name. The Panhandle divisions produce calves efficiently. Cows give birth each spring, adding to the herd. But the syndicate faces a timing problem. Young steers need time to mature before market. Grazing them to weight in Texas is possible but inefficient. Grass quality varies seasonally. Water availability fluctuates. Texas summers are hot. Cattle gain weight slowly in extreme heat. They establish northern maturing grounds, first in South Dakota, then in 1889, north of Miles City, Montana. Cattle are trailed from the Panhandle north across hundreds of miles. The northern grass is different. The climate cooler during summer. Steers fatten more efficiently before being shipped to market. For 11 consecutive years, the syndicate drives approximately 12,500 head annually to these northern ranges. Cumulative total, more than 130,000 cattle moved north. This extension is rarely emphasized in popular accounts, which focus on the Texas footprint, but the northern program is integral to profitability. Without it, the ranch cannot efficiently convert young Texas-born stock into market-ready beef at competitive weights and market prices. The logistics are complex and expensive. Trail drives of that distance require experienced trail bosses, capable crews, remudas, coordination with railroads at the destination. The syndicate must arrange for grazing access, leasing range, or purchasing land to support northern operations. Costs accumulate: wages for trail crews, losses during drives from weather or accidents, grazing fees, land purchases. The syndicate manages this extended system for over a decade, then gradually phases it out. Railroads expand in Texas, reaching closer to Panhandle divisions. Shipping directly from Texas becomes more feasible and less expensive than trailing cattle north. Market dynamics shift. By the early 20th century, more cattle ship directly from Panhandle rail points without the northern detour. Northern grounds are sold or leases lapse. The ranch contracts geographically back toward original Texas footprint. This contraction is part of broader strategic shift. The ranch is no longer in expansion mode. The investors are preparing for liquidation. Chapter 8. The Fence-Cutting War. Texas has a fence problem in the 1880s. The ranch inherits it at scale. Open range is closing across the state. Large operations string wire across vast tracts, blocking trails, cutting off water access. Small ranchers and settlers respond by cutting fences at night. The practice spreads. In some counties, fence cutting becomes organized. Crews ride out after dark with wire cutters, slash miles in coordinated actions, disperse before dawn. The message? Enclosure of open range is contested. Repairs are expensive and time-consistent. One section repaired, another cut elsewhere. The fence becomes a target. 1,500 miles of perimeter wire plus extensive internal divisions. Cutting sections allows settlers' cattle onto syndicate grass. It also signals resistance to investors from Chicago, Illinois, now controlling what locals believe should remain accessible. The fence physically manifests the transfer of control from local users to absentee corporate ownership. Economic stakes are real. Every cut requires repair. Crews ride perimeter constantly looking for breaks. When one is found, they splice wire, brace damaged posts, move on. Materials cost money. Labor costs money. While repairs are made, cattle drift through gaps, mixing syndicate stock with neighbors' animals, creating sorting problems during roundup. January 8, 1884. The Texas legislature passes anti-fence cutting legislation, making the act a felony punishable by 1 to 5 years in prison. Other fencing offenses receive penalties. The law is a response to widespread disorder and economic damage. It does not stop cutting immediately, but changes calculation. What was a misdemeanor or civil matter now carries serious criminal penalties. Some cutters stop. Others continue, but operate more carefully. The syndicate hires enforcers. One is Ira Ayton, a former Texas Ranger with a reputation for directness. Ayton patrols sections of fence, investigates cuts, follows leads, pursues suspects. Gradually, as legal penalties increase and enforcement becomes serious, cutting frequency decreases. But underlying resentment does not disappear. The ranch represents everything that frustrates small operators and settlers: absentee ownership based in Chicago, Illinois, corporate management disconnected from local culture, foreign capital controlling Texas land, enclosure of range recently treated as commons. The fence is a physical manifestation of that divide. Every repair reminds the land belongs to someone else now. Every locked gate reinforces this is private property, not public range. Fence-cutting conflict gradually subsides but never fully resolves. Acceptance is not approval. The wire remains. The resentment remains beneath it. Chapter 9. Running the Numbers. Problems. Surface that force management changes. B.H. Campbell is first general manager. Campbell believes in aggressive expansion, stock the range heavily, build infrastructure rapidly, grow into profitability through scale. Under his management, the ranch reaches peak cattle numbers and completes much of initial fencing and windmill construction. Campbell is a cattleman who believes the ranch can succeed as livestock operation. But 1887 brings problems. Reports surface of wanted outlaws operating on the range. Management issues accumulate. The situation triggers investigation. Senator Avery Matlock conducts inquiry. Campbell resigns. January 1st, 1888. Albert Boyce becomes general manager. Boyce's approach differs from Campbell's. He enforces strict ranch rules, documented in writing. Prohibitions are specific: no gambling, no drinking alcoholic beverages, no abusing stock, no killing beef without permission. Boyce attempts to impose corporate discipline on sprawling operation where distance makes enforcement difficult. Under Boyce, the ranch continues operating, but attention shifts. The operation is being professionalized, regularized, brought under tighter control. Boyce manages through turn of century. The ranch runs, but margins remain thin. Operational headwinds persist: droughts, blizzards, prairie fires, predators, fence cutting, declining markets. The ranch operates largely without profit for much of its life. 1905. The syndicate creates office of land commissioner to promote sales. Henry Boyce becomes general manager. Boyce takes over during explicit wind-down phase. His mandate is clear: manage orderly liquidation of assets while minimizing losses. Not a growth position, an exit management role. Boyce oversees sale of divisions, disposal of cattle, settlement of accounts, transfer of remaining assets to buyers. Efficient and unsentimental. His job is closing books with best possible outcome for investors. Each manager leaves a mark. Each makes decisions that ripple through divisions, but none fundamentally change underlying reality. The ranch is financial instrument dressed as ranch. It exists to convert Texas land into investor capital. Cattle are means. Managers come and go. The strategy remains. Cattle prices fluctuate based on factors far from the Panhandle: national economic conditions, demand from meatpacking centers, competing supply from other regions, railroad shipping costs, currency values, commodity trader speculation. The syndicate can control when to sell, but not price received. Dry year produces underweight cattle, bringing lower prices. Selling means accepting losses. Holding means incurring costs to feed through another cycle with no guarantee of improvement. Shipping costs are significant and inflexible. Railroads charge per car, per mile. The syndicate negotiates rates, but leverage is limited. 1887. The Fort Worth and Denver City Railway builds through Panhandle. Channing, Texas emerges as major shipping point. Main headquarters, a 22-room building, is established there. When rails arrive, shipping becomes more efficient. But railroads hold pricing power. They know the ranch depends on them. Competition from other regions affects prices. Cattle from northern plains, from Colorado, from other Texas ranges, all flow into same markets. Buyers play suppliers against each other. Size does not guarantee premium prices. Volume can depress prices if too much supply hits markets simultaneously. Timing. Sales becomes strategic calculation. Wait for better prices and risk deterioration, or sell now and accept current rates. The syndicate faces internal pressure from its own financial structure. British investors provided capital through bonds and expect returns. Interest accrues. Taxes are due annually on 3 million acres. Operating costs continue regardless of revenue. The ranch must generate cash flow to service debt and satisfy investors. This creates pressure to sell cattle even when market conditions are unfavorable, because not selling means defaulting on financial obligations. For much of operational life, the ranch operates largely without profit from cattle sales. Revenue comes in, costs go out nearly as fast. Wages, infrastructure maintenance, taxes, debt service, shipping fees, operational expenses consume income. Margins are thin to non-existent. By turn of century, investors understand they will not get rich from cattle. Real return will come from land appreciation and liquidation. The arithmetic tells the story. 3 million acres taxed annually. 150 cowboys at $25 to $30 per month, paid 12 months a year whether markets are good or bad. 1,000 horses requiring feed and care. 325 windmills needing maintenance, parts, eventual replacement. 1,500 miles of fence requiring constant patrol and repair. 27 years of continuous operation from 1885 to 1912. Every year, the ledger opens with costs already locked in before a single steer goes to market. Compare that to a smaller operation. A 5,000-acre ranch might employ 5 men, maintain 10 windmills, patrol 30 miles of fence. The costs scale linearly. The revenue does not. When a drought hits or prices drop, the small operator cuts crew and waits. The syndicate cannot. Distance and division structure mean baseline costs stay fixed. A cowboy in Escarbada still needs paying whether or not Spring Lake sold cattle that month. Here is the ledger reality. The ranch often runs on thin margins, or none at all, and investors lean on land sales and fresh capital when markets or weather turn. The gap is filled by borrowing against land value, by British bond payments, by investor capital injections. The ranch is not a self-sustaining operation. It is a holding pattern funded by external capital, waiting for land prices to rise enough to make liquidation profitable. 27 years of operations, thousands of cattle sold, hundreds of thousands of dollars in wages paid, infrastructure built and maintained, and at the end, the profit comes not from ranching, but from selling the land underneath. Chapter 10. The Year's Grind. The ranch operates on seasonal cycles that dictate labor intensity. Spring is branding season. Calves born over winter must be processed. Crews gather cattle in designated pastures, separate calves from cows. Rope them, throw them, apply the brand with hot irons, castrate males, release. The work is physically demanding and time-sensitive. Waiting too long means larger, stronger calves harder to handle. Crews work long days processing thousands across divisions. In a productive year, 35,000 calves were branded across the ranch. The branding process is standardized but brutal. Calves roped by hind legs, dragged to fire where irons heat. Men hold the calf down while another applies the brand. The smell of burned hair and hide fills the air. Males are castrated with knives, removed tissue discarded. Occasionally, a calf dies from shock or mishandling. These losses are accepted as part of the process. The goal is volume and speed. Sentiment is not productive. A calf that escapes the rope costs time. A calf that kicks a cowboy causes injury. A calf that dies costs money. But stopping to reconsider costs more. Spring lasts only so long. The work continues until it is finished. Summer is maintenance season. Cowboys ride fence lines looking for breaks caused by weather, wildlife, vandalism. They check windmills for mechanical problems, grease parts, tighten connections, replace what is worn out. They patrol for strays, cattle drifted through gaps or wandered from home pastures. The work is hot, dusty, often monotonous. Neglecting summer maintenance leads to compounding problems in fall and winter. Summer also kills cattle through heat stress. Animals cluster at water sources during the hottest parts of the day. If a windmill fails and a tank goes dry, cattle become disoriented, wander, and die of dehydration within days. Cowboys check tanks daily during extreme heat, ensuring pumps function and water is available. Routine until it is not. A broken pump discovered too late means dead cattle and lost revenue. Fall is roundup season, operational climax of year. Cattle must be gathered from vast pastures, sorted by age and condition, driven to shipping points along rail lines. Market-ready steers separated from cows, calves, younger stock. Gathered cattle driven, sometimes over many miles, to corrals near Channing, Texas, or other rail access points. Loaded onto rail cars for shipment to market. Roundup requires coordination across divisions, maximum labor deployment, long days in saddle. The roundup is violent work. Cattle resist being gathered and moved. Cowboys rope, drag, force animals into groups. Steers break away, must be chased down. Horses stumble in rough terrain. Men thrown, injured, occasionally killed. Goal is gathering everything, but strays are inevitable. Some cattle evade roundup entirely, become permanent residents of remote pastures, uncounted and unsold. Loading cattle onto rail cars is dangerous. Animals panic at confinement, kick, crush against each other. Cowboys work in tight spaces between cars and loading chutes, at risk of being trampled or pinned. Injuries common, broken ribs, crushed feet, concussions. The work continues. Schedules must be met. Winter is survival season. Severe weather arrives with little warning. Blizzards drop temperatures and visibility simultaneously. Blue northers, strong cold fronts, produce rapid temperature drops, turning conditions lethal fast. Cattle instinctively drift south ahead of storms, walking until they hit fence or obstacle. If cattle pile up against fence during blizzard, they suffocate under weight of those behind them. Cowboys must ride during storms to check fences, move cattle from dangerous accumulations. Breaking ice on water tanks becomes daily task, sometimes multiple times per day. In worst years, winter kills cattle through cold, starvation when snow buries grass, suffocation in drift piles. Losses tallied when spring arrives, and crews count what survived. Winter work is least glamorous and most dangerous. Cowboys ride in bitter cold, checking cattle barely visible through blowing snow. Horses slip on ice, fall, crush riders. Some cowboys do not return from winter patrols. Ranch records, death, pays out wages owed, hires replacement when spring arrives. This seasonal rhythm repeats annually from 1885 through operational years. Each cycle similar in structure, but different in details. Weather varies, markets vary, labor availability varies, but fundamental pattern remains: spring branding, summer maintenance, fall roundup, winter survival. The ranch is not pastoral landscape, it is seasonal processing system consuming labor and animals in roughly equal measure, producing beef and converting grass into revenue as long as system holds. Chapter 11. The liquidation starts quietly. The strategic pivot from operation to liquidation accelerates in early 1900. The syndicate begins actively marketing and selling divisions. George Littlefield, prominent Texas cattleman and banker, purchases substantial portion, 235,858 acres, of Yellow House's acreage. Other major buyers follow. William Halsell purchases 184,155 acres. John Shelton acquires Ojo Bravo lands, not distress selling. Planned liquidation. Land appreciated since 1882. Railroads now serve region, towns established or platted, settlers arriving, looking for farmland. Demand exists, prices higher than acquisition cost. Other buyers enter market. Some purchase large tracts intending to subdivide and resell. Others buy smaller parcels for farming or smaller-scale ranching. Still others are speculators purchasing large blocks to resell at profit. The syndicate sells strategically, converting grass into cash while maintaining enough operational capacity to run cattle on remaining acreage. Cattle operation continues but is now explicitly secondary to real estate liquidation. 1905. Syndicate formalizes liquidation by establishing Office of Land Commissioner to promote sales. Administrative acknowledgement. Primary business is no longer ranching, it is land sales. Henry Boyce appointed general manager of remaining ranch operations. Mandate clear: manage orderly wind-down while liquidating assets with minimal loss. Boyce is competent, methodical, unsentimental, not tasked with expanding herd or improving profitability through ranching innovation, tasked with converting assets into cash and closing accounts. Under his management, cattle sales continue on schedule, driven more by liquidation timelines than optimal market timing. Infrastructure maintained only to extent necessary until parcels sell. New investments minimal. Trajectory clear to everyone. Cattle continue grazing on remaining acreage. Cowboys continue working, but workforce shrinks as divisions sell. Jobs disappear as buyers take possession, install own crews, or convert rangeland to other uses. Infrastructure built over 2 decades, windmills, fences, corrals, transferred to buyers or left behind. 1909. Most British bonds used to finance ranch redeemed in full. Financial milestone noted in contemporary accounts, though detailed terms not made public. Implication: investors recovered capital, possibly earned modest return. But clarity on profitability elusive. Profit, such as it exists, comes from land appreciation over 2 decades and strategic liquidation, not from cattle operations. Livestock revenue never fully covered cost of running 3-million-acre ranch. Land value increase did. Buyers want different things. Some want farmland, particularly southern sections where soil and water support cultivation. Panhandle being reimagined as wheat country, irrigation technology improving. Buyers envision fields, not cattle. Syndicates' land, once valued for grazing capacity, now valued for tillable acres and rail access moving grain to market. Others want smaller ranching operations. They purchase sections suitable for running modest herds, building on infrastructure already installed. Windmills and fences transfer with land. essentially acquiring turnkey operations at manageable scale. Prices vary depending on location, water availability, rail access. Parcels near Channing, Texas, or other rail towns sell for premiums. Remote sections far from infrastructure sell for less. Land with functioning windmills and good wells sells for more than land without water development. The $500,000 invested in water infrastructure, recovering some value through enhanced land prices, though not all. 8 divisions dismantled unevenly. Some sell relatively quickly, others take longer. Some parcels sit waiting for buyers or better prices. Liquidation doesn't arrive as one sale. It accelerates in the late 1890s and early 1900s, big blocks to big names, then a long tail of smaller tracts. Average price per acre rising as infrastructure reaches region and towns establish. Total revenue from land sales exceeding total investment in land, construction, and operations. Not by massive margin, but enough to satisfy investors and justify the 2-decade wait. The ranch succeeds, finally, by dissolving. Chapter 12. Last Cattle Out. November 1st, 1912. Final cattle under ownership sold. The transaction marks official end as active cattle operation. Operational specifics not extensively documented. Significance becomes clear primarily in retrospect when historians later identify 1912 as last operational year. At the time, simply another market day. Final entry in ledger. After November 1st, 1912, no cattle run. Brand remains registered. Corporate entity continues on paper. Land sales continue for years. But the part involving daily work with livestock, branding, roundup, trailing, shipping, is finished. Infrastructure remains in place for time. Windmills continue pumping on parcels not yet sold. Fences remain standing, though maintenance ceases, and weather begins work of decay. Bunkhouses and corrals sit empty or repurposed by buyers. Some divisions sold with buildings intact. New owners inherit physical remnants: wells, wire, weathered structures. Use what remains useful, discard rest. Cowboys scatter across region and beyond. Some find work on other ranches still operating in Panhandle. Some leave ranching entirely, taking jobs in growing towns along rail lines. Few stay with syndicate in administrative capacities, helping manage remaining land sales. Most disappear from historical record. Names, if recorded at all, appear on final payroll sheets, then vanish. The work they did, riding fence lines in summer heat and winter cold, branding calves by thousands, breaking ice on tanks before dawn, trailing cattle to rail points, repairing windmills, fixing wire, sleeping in line camps far from settlement, that work not commemorated with monuments, simply stops. Men move on. Ranch dissolves. Land remains, but belongs to others now. Syndicate maintains office in Chicago, Illinois. Administrative work continues, processing land sales, transferring titles, settling accounts with vendors and creditors. But operational phase, part requiring men on horseback managing cattle across 3 million acres, over. What remains is bureaucratic aftermath. Paperwork, title transfers, final distributions to investors. 1915. Farwell Estate forms Capital Reservation Lands, trust to continue selling remaining parcels. Sales extend for decades. 1963. Last parcel sold. Dissolution complete. Chapter 13. The Survey Complications. Questions about original survey resurface long after cattle are gone. When Mabry walked boundaries with chain and compass in the 1880s, he worked with the best available maps and survey technology. But maps were incomplete in areas. County lines not always definitively established. Prior land grants created complex overlapping claims. Mabry marked corners, recorded bearings, documented what he believed was perimeter of 3 million acres as specified in contract. State of Texas issued patents based on Mabry's survey. Syndicate accepted patents as proof of ownership. For years, no one questioned boundaries seriously. Ranch operated, cattle grazed, fences built along what everyone believed were correct lines. But as Syndicate sells parcels and buyers conduct own surveys for title purposes, discrepancies emerge. Some boundaries marked by Mabry do not align with later, more precise surveys. County assessors, working to establish tax rolls, identify sections where claimed acreage does not match county records. In some areas, Syndicate appears to own less land than contract promised. In others, appears to own more. The more category becomes legally problematic. Contract specified 3 million acres. If Mabry's survey included acreage beyond that amount, whether through error, ambiguous boundary descriptions, or shifts in county lines after the original survey, then Syndicate received more than entitled under contract. Survey complications create questions about land ownership requiring resolution through administrative and legal processes. Details of how individual parcels affected and how buyers navigated complications, not uniformly documented in surviving general summaries. Irony is complete. Entire project originated as solution to state budget problem. Texas could not afford to build capital, so traded land. Trade created ranch. Ranch required survey to define boundaries. Survey, conducted under difficult conditions with imperfect information, contained discrepancies. Discrepancies went undetected for decades while ranch operated and land sold. Discrepancies surfaced during and after liquidation, when buyers and county officials conducted more precise surveys. State and Syndicate's successors worked through complications over time. Investors, by that point, largely exited. Some buyers navigated issues. Administrative resolution extended over years. Chapter 14. Memory as a Second Fence, 1936. First reunion organized. Event conceived and executed by former ranch employees, families, local boosters. Combines rodeo, community picnic, collective memory exercise. Former cowboys attend, some traveling considerable distances. They trade stories, compare experiences, argue about which division was toughest, which managers hardest, which seasons worst. Reunion taps into nostalgia for vanished way of life. Event popular enough to become annual, 1937. Reunion moves to Dalhart, Texas, where it continues for decades with rodeo events and free barbecue. Politicians attend to be seen. Reunion becomes institution, marker on regional calendar. But Reunion also rewrites ranch in memory. Presented at these gatherings as adventure, open country, wild horses, hard but honorable work, camaraderie among men doing difficult things. Harder truths, low wages, frequent injuries, corporate indifference to individual workers, isolation and monotony of line camp duty, reality that most cowboys were replaceable and treated as such, softened or omitted. Cowboys who left frustrated or bitter return decades later and tell different stories, shaped by time and social context of reunion itself. Mythology replaces mechanism. Reunion becomes venue for constructing usable past, one emphasizing grit and independence rather than exploitation and expendability. Not unique to this ranch. Pattern visible across Western ranching history. Reunions celebrate what people want to remember, not necessarily what happened. Coverage reinforces mythological frame. Articles emphasize scale, often described as largest fenced ranch in world at its peak, 3 million acres under one brand, cattle empire unmatched in Texas history. Descriptions factually supportable but selectively framed. Articles do not dwell on ranch's failure to generate profit from cattle operations. Do not discuss liquidation as retreat from unsustainable business model. Do not mention survey complications. Reunion narrative about legacy and grandeur, not ledgers and logistics. Reunion serves practical functions for Dalhart, Texas. Town needs identity distinguishing it from other small panhandle settlements competing for population, commerce, relevance. The ranch provides that identity. Annual Reunion draws visitors from across region and beyond. They spend money on lodging, food, fuel. Event generates economic activity in town, otherwise depending on agriculture and ranching, sectors subject to weather and market volatility. Other panhandle towns have own claims to significance: railroad junctions, county seats, early settlement dates, agricultural production records. But the ranch is more cinematically appealing than grain elevator or courthouse. Reunion, celebrating cowboy heritage, easier to market than tax base or plat map. Dalhart, Texas, leans into association. The brand becomes synonymous with town in regional consciousness. Chapter 15. Tourism Builds a Cleaner Ranch. 1969. Littlefield, Texas, erects a large windmill monument. The structure was built to evoke the ranch's infrastructure, specifically hundreds of windmills that once pumped water across divisions. The monument is large, visible from the highway, and designed to catch the attention of passing drivers. It functions as a landmark and tourist attraction. People stop, take photographs, read historical markers, and continue their journeys. The monument commemorates the ranch. The point is commemoration and tourism. The windmill monument signals that Littlefield, Texas, has a connection to ranching history, to legacy, to the cattle culture that shaped the region. Legacy. The town itself grew on land once part of the Yellow Houses division. The town exists because the ranch was liquidated and sold in parcels. The windmill monument commemorates the ranch while standing on ground that was sold off when the ranch dissolved. Irony is rarely remarked upon. The brand itself persists in commercial use across the Panhandle. Businesses incorporate the letters into their names: steakhouses serving beef, feed stores supplying ranchers, auto repair shops serving rural communities, and retail stores with no direct connection to ranching. The name signals heritage, authenticity, and regional identity. It is shorthand for associations such as hard work, open country, Texas independence, and ranching tradition. Heritage. The brand is valuable precisely because it is empty of specific operational meaning. The ranch no longer exists. Cattle are long gone. The syndicate dissolved. What remains is a three-letter mark that can be projected onto almost anything. You can name a restaurant after the brand without confronting the specifics of what the ranch actually was. A financial scheme operating cattle as an interim revenue stream while waiting to liquidate land at appreciated prices. Museums collect artifacts, branding irons, some rusted, some preserved, photographs documenting ranch life, ledger pages showing payroll and expenses, maps marking division boundaries and water sources, tools used in fence building and windmill maintenance. These objects are displayed as evidence of achievement, as tangible connections to the historical operation. But what the artifacts actually document is the process, how the syndicate converted land grants into infrastructure, infrastructure into grazing capacity into livestock revenue, and eventually all of it into cash through land sales. The artifacts are clean, mounted behind glass, and labeled. The process they represent was not clean. It was contested, expensive, and ultimately unsustainable as a cattle operation. The Texas State Historical Association describes the main headquarters operation at Channing as a 22-room setup. What still stands in the town today is the old general office, smaller and quieter, a leftover brick witness to the whole operation. The site functions as a marker. This is where decisions were made, where managers lived, and where the ranch was administered. But those decisions, managers, and administration are gone. What remains are structures and interpretive signs. Chapter 16, Brand Without Empire. The ranch is now a story assembled from fragments, told in pieces. Historians write about different aspects: the capital deal and political context, the survey and geographical challenges, the operational logistics of running 8 divisions across 220 miles, and the liquidation strategy and execution. Each scholarly account emphasizes different dimensions. Some focus on the unprecedented scale, others focus on the failure to achieve profitability through livestock operations. Few examine the financial and legal maneuvering that allowed investors from Chicago, Illinois, and British capital to convert Texas land into returns and then exit. Genealogists trace families who worked the ranch. They search census records, marriage certificates, death records, and land deeds. They find names of cowboys who worked a season or a decade, foremen who managed divisions, and specialists who drilled wells or built corrals. Most left no diaries, no letters, and no published memoirs. Presence in the historical record is sparse: a name on a payroll sheet, a signature on a receipt. Genealogical work recovers some names, but lived experience behind those names remains largely inaccessible. Question that opened this investigation: was the ranch built to run cattle or to finance construction and convert land into capital? The answer is layered and unsatisfying for those seeking simplicity. The ranch was built to do both. It succeeded at one. It failed at the other, or at least did not succeed sufficiently at the other to justify continuation. Cattle operation was real. 150,000 head at peak, not symbolic. 35,000 calves branded in a year, not metaphorical. But the operation largely failed to generate profit sufficient to justify capital invested and ongoing costs incurred. Revenue came in from cattle sales, but expenses went out nearly as fast: wages, infrastructure maintenance, taxes on 3 million acres, debt service, shipping costs, operational overhead. Real financial return came from land appreciation and strategic liquidation. Syndicate received land at one value in 1882. By early 20th century, railroads arrived, towns platted, settlers wanted acreage. Land was worth more. Syndicate sold in pieces over more than a decade, converting grass into cash. That strategy worked. Investors recovered capital and earned returns. But returns came from real estate speculation, not from ranching. The ranch survives in multiple forms, none resembling the original operation. It survives as infrastructure repurposed or abandoned. It survives as annual reunions attended by descendants and enthusiasts, events constructing a particular version of the past. It survives as a brand used by businesses across the region to signal heritage and authenticity. It survives as artifacts in museums and archives, objects behind glass. And it survives as a name, meaning different things to different people. Some still believe it stands for 10 in Texas, repeating folklore. Others understand it as an anti-alteration brand design, a practical explanation. Some see it as a logo disconnected from historical specifics, just 3 letters sounding Western and old. The brand is stable in part because no definitive consensus exists on what it means. It is open to interpretation, making it adaptable and durable. Numbers that survive are clear: 3 million acres granted, roughly 150,000 cattle at operational peak, approximately 150 cowboys employed, around 1,000 horses in the remuda, 325 windmills installed, 100 dams built, 1,500 miles of fence strung, 1885 through November 1, 1912, Operational years. Those numbers are documented and verifiable. Questions that survive are less clear. Who truly built this operation? Syndicate members in Chicago, Illinois, who provided capital and direction? Managers who implemented the strategy on the ground? Cowboys who did daily work of branding, riding, repairing? Who profited from the enterprise? Investors who received returns on liquidation? Buyers who purchased land at appreciated prices? Who paid the costs? Cowboys who worked for $25 to $30 per month? Cattle that died in blizzards and droughts? What was the ranch for? To build a capital? To run cattle? To convert public land into private capital? To employ men in hard country? To fence open range? All of these? None completely? Answers depend on which records you prioritize, which accounts you trust, which aspects of the operation you consider central versus peripheral. The syndicate kept detailed financial ledgers. Those ledgers show costs and revenues, profit and loss. Cowboys kept moving, most leaving no written record beyond names. Land remained, though ownership transferred dozens or hundreds of times. What remains now is a name without an active empire, a brand without cattle, a mythology that grew larger and more powerful than the operation it describes. It is often described as the largest fenced ranch in the world at its peak. That description is likely accurate for its era. Also, real estate speculation scheme requiring cattle as interim asset class and operational cover while waiting for external conditions. Railroad expansion, town development, settler demand, to raise land values sufficiently to make liquidation profitable. Both characterizations accurate, both incomplete, neither simple. Ranch built on paper, enacted on grass, financed with British and American capital, worked by labor drawn from Panhandle's diverse frontier population, managed from distant headquarters in Chicago, Illinois, operated across 10 Texas counties, extended operationally into Montana and South Dakota, liquidated in pieces over more than a decade, reduced finally to artifacts, photographs, three-letter brand that can mean almost anything. 10 in Texas, or not. Question remains unresolved after more than a century. Perhaps that is the point. Brand survives because open to interpretation. Ranch dissolved because from the beginning it was always designed to.